Hello, hello, hello. It is Dr. Sasheen. Welcome to Women in Transition podcast. If you catch me on the YouTube, then you will see my smiling face and fuzzy hair because it's really humid here. And if you catch me via audio only, welcome to the podcast. Come over to YouTube, click on the subscribe button, hang out, leave a comment, let me know you're listening. Welcome back. It's been a few weeks since I posted a new episode, mostly because we've been on spring break. And if you happen to be catching me on YouTube, you will see I got a little son. Little son. That's not a sun mark, but I got a little son. And now we're back into the swing of things, back in the saddle, back into the swing of things. As the world once again does this heavy lifting thing called turning on its axis and trying to convince us it's okay to hang on by our fingernails, right? So, what are we talking about today? Well, as I always like to say, I'm not here for a long time, but I am here for a good time. And today I'm talking about what are real options when the world is on fire? Because the world's been on fire almost 2 years now. If you happen to be on this channel because you caught my very, very big video that I have that is pinned to the YouTube channel that said the new rules of engagement, well, we're back. It's almost 2 years later. The rules are even more important now than they ever have been before, and times they are changing, friends. Times they are changing. So welcome to the channel. Again, I'm Dr. Sasheen, your host, your Pied Piper, your journey on this journey as we walk towards, who knows, a cliff. What's next? No idea. But what I do know is there are two rules that we need to continue to live by if we're going to survive these times. Number one is scrolling the bottom of the screen. Rule number one is your peace is non-negotiable, and that is even more important now than ever before. Your peace has got to continue to be non-negotiable. Hang on a minute. There we go. And rule number two is do not let anyone or anything fuck with rule number one. And that is even more important as more and more and more things happen. And it feels as though the march of this series of unfortunate events is continuing to march despite well, not despite, but in spite of some rallies to the contrary. So what are we talking about today? Couple things. Stick around to the end. I'll tell you about a new group that I started on Facebook for my aspiring fiction writers out there. If you're looking for a home to settle in while you write your first novel, second, third, or fourth, but more so if you're looking for a community to hang out in, to have a place to share your ideas, get some feedback, feel like you've got some support, come over and join us. As for my women in transition audience, I have not forgotten about us. We're still meeting every Tuesday. We've been on spring break for a few weeks, but we're still meeting every Tuesday for our Tuesday tea break, which is our time in the week where we get together and we just chit chat, have a little bit of conversation, usually with a cup of tea, though I've had a smoothie for the past few because I've come right after working out and it's been warm. Y'all, has it been warm? Whew. So tea in the morning has kind of segued into a lovely chilled smoothie in the morning, which is also a pretty fantastic thing. Okay, so there are a couple things that I think are really important that I want us to talk about. The first is the anxiety is off the charts. Okay, you would have to be living under a rock not to notice that the world seems to be spinning precariously close to certain markers that none of us have wanted to see. And for those of us who've been on the planet longer than 10 years or even 20 years, markers that we didn't necessarily want to see again. We surely didn't want to be at loggerheads in the Middle East again in our lifetimes. Forgive the darkness. If you're watching me on YouTube, I've moved offices, and so this office is really dark right now because I don't have everything set up yet. All the lighting's not up yet. The stuff is not on the walls yet. It's coming. I'm in a new spot. I'm in a new spot. But if you lived through Mr. Gorbachev tear down that wall, right? If your history, if your history isn't that far removed and you are looking around the world going, didn't we come through this already? I hear you. We did. And we thought we had made progress. And unfortunately, We did make progress, but the enemy of progress are people who are very wed to living a life, living in a past reality that does not exist anymore. But they're hell bent on bringing it back. So here we are. And I talk about this if you follow me on other platforms. I'm not apolitical. I try to keep this more uplifting and upbeat and talk about things that we can do to restore our sanity and our peace. But sometimes I also have to break it down for you and be really real. For those of you who didn't read Project 2025, you should probably read it because the playbook is being followed almost verbatim, and we are reaching some pivotal markers where this project is going to reach completion. And because it's going to reach completion, there are just certain things that are not going to go back to the way they were with anything less than, as Walden would say, acts of civil disobedience. Now, do with that what you will. If you've never read Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau, and it's probably something that you should dust off, dig out, take a peek in, if just so you can get a sense of what the country, what writers who have lived in interesting times have observed and how prescient their words were for what we're living through now. I'd also recommend reading a lot of Octavia Butler. The Kindred would be a good one, a good place to start. A Parable of the Sower. Anyway, so all that to say, people are real anxious right now. Really, really, really anxious right now. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Excuse me. Anxiety is at an all-time high because the world is an anxious place and it's not getting less anxious by the day. But I'm also not going to say that there's no way to reduce some of that anxiety. Because I've said this before and I'll keep saying it. Every place isn't burning at the same rate or burning at all as the place that some of us are currently calling home. And because of that, as the tendrils of change wrap themselves around different parts of the world, some of those tendrils are ribbons, and the change is not destructive. And some of those tendrils are hydras, and the change is going to blow, foundations apart. You have to figure out where you're standing. And based on that, if the tendrils in your world are something that you need to be anxious about, or if you can relax. And that means taking stock of what's happening in your own space, in your around you, in your place, with your people, with your family, in your community, right? I've talked a bit about how it's time to really start taking some stock and making some moves on those plans that you might have been sitting on the back burner just trying to see what might have transpired for the past couple of years. Now's a good time to make some decisions about if the plans that you really want to have acted on, want to act on, need to be acted on. Because now's a good time to start acting on some of those things. Decide where you want to be by the end of the year. I talked about that today, Tuesday in tea time, which I think you'll get this video on Thursday. I'm wearing the same outfit, so you'll see. But I talked about that Tuesday during tea time, how it's really important to not overthink anymore. It's really important to not overthink. And part of not overthinking is getting a handle on your emotional reactions so that you can make some good choices for you and your family. Getting your anxiety under control has got to be 101 if you're someone who suffers from anxiety. I wrote the book, it's on the bottom of the screen, called The Anxiety Solution. It is a beginner book. It is a good starting place, but it's not a place to stop if you suffer from chronic or severe anxiety, some anxiety that is paralyzing you. But if you are suffering from what I would call randomized everyday anxiety, then the Anxiety Solution is a great book to help you get some handles and put some structures in place to help you get through those anxious moments. So number one is everyone's anxious, but everyone is not anxious the same, nor do they need to be, because every place is not on fire. It just isn't. And don't be resentful because other places aren't burning. If your place is burning and other places not burning, and don't be upset with those other people. They didn't do it. That just is going to increase your anxiety, being mad at folks who didn't do anything to you. But it is important to recognize that the world is changing. We're no longer what we were 2 years ago. We are not going to go back. We never have. History is clear. We never go back. We always go forward, lurching, stumbling, falling, getting up, dusting off, doing something else, but we don't go back. So, whatever state of the world you thought 2 years ago would be the state of the world now, let it go. It's time to just let that go and think about what are my options in a changed world. In a changing world, where do I go next? Which brings me to number two. So, the anxiety is the first thing that you want to think about how it's impacting you and where you can get a handle on it so that you can begin to make good choices and then act on those choices because anxiety will keep you paralyzed. It'll just keep you standing in one spot, right? And I don't want you to stand in one spot. I want you to get a move on so that as the world changes, your world changes with it. So number two, this one's gonna come and it's gonna ruffle some feathers, but I'm gonna say it and we'll just have to work on it together. Number two, for many people, especially people who look like me, Black woman here, the we were the first casualties in the war on women and minorities, right? The number of women who were cut, whose jobs were cut because why were they cut? Because for a fairly long period of time after the fall of slavery, Reconstruction, and the opening up of jobs, the government job was the only job that African Americans could get because of discrimination, Jim Crow, segregation, all that kind of stuff. And so government jobs were the jobs that African Americans could get. And so those good government jobs lifted many African Americans out of poverty and pushed them into the middle class. And over the course of time, his family legacies became, in it not that much time, y'all, became such that the my father worked for the IRS. Like there's a history in families of working for the government. And that goes back to a time when there were no really other jobs outside of serfdom as I call it, that you could work, places that you could work that would willingly hire Black Americans because of racism and the after effects of slavery. So the fact that so many government jobs got cut, and specifically that minorities got cut, didn't come as a shock to anybody, first of all, who understands how history works, and number two, had read Project 2025. Those jobs were the first on the chopping block, and we already knew that they weren't coming back. Okay? Knew they weren't coming back. The hue and cry now is that so many other jobs are also going away, never to return. They're not going to come back. And it isn't just Black women that are starting to feel the impact of it, even though we felt it first and more keenly. But we're also very resilient and survivors, which is why you don't see us running around going, I'll just work anything. No, actually, I won't. I actually won't because we've learned a few things because we've been through a few things. And so has the rest of the country, but they've got amnesia for some reason right now. Anyway, but now other people are also starting to realize that these job cuts that impacted one segment of the population are starting to trickle into other segments of the population. That the guarantees for being a certain way aren't guaranteeing that you're not being subject to discrimination, racism, and the things that Black people have always said. There was enough of that to go around for everybody, but people didn't necessarily want to believe that. And now they're feeling the effects of there was enough of that to go around for everybody. The SAVE Act is a great example of how there's enough ism to go around for everybody. So feminism became the dirty word, and here we are, right? So now that we're watching Oracle lay off 30,000, Amazon lay off 3,000, those weren't Black people necessarily. There were some caught up in it, but the majority of those were not Black folks. So the reality is that now the narrative of who's in trouble is beginning to morph and change. But I want to talk to my sisters, Black women, um, minority women, Black women, minority women, my Native sisters, whom I'm going to say this to you, but this doesn't necessarily apply to you in the same way. And I understand that, and I'll address that in a moment. If your legacy of this country is as an immigrant, your experience is vastly different than those whose legacy in this country was either we were already here before you got here, our Native sisters, or we didn't ask to come here, my ancestors. And I belong to several women's groups, and one of the topics of conversation has started to not even started has for the past year been, some of us didn't have the choice on whether or not to be here. We were brought here. We have a choice on whether or not to let this country continue to beat us down. And I think there is something And the clarity in that for a lot of people, especially women of color, Black women. Again, I cannot speak to my Native sisters because they were here first. This all belongs to them. We are guests on stolen land. And so to say they should find someplace different is not something that I'm ever going to say to them. But for my Black sisters and my women of color who may have immigrated to this country as children, this is an option. It is not a given. And I think if you stop looking at life in this America as a given and therefore I have to fight to stay to get some kind of status quo so that I can make it work, and instead start looking at it as just another option on the buffet of options, then the anxiety might lessen. Then the feeling of desperation might stop. Because when the American dream is an option and not a necessity, then your options expand, right? Then where you live and how you exist in the world expands. Who you are in the world expands. I teach a class, I teach several classes, but this term I'm teaching intercultural communication, and we just came off a unit talking about identity and nationality as an identity always comes up because it's one of the ones that we study. But it is a fascinating conversation to have with students who do not have an allegiance to a nationality per se, especially because I teach a lot of first and second generation students whose parents immigrated. And they see themselves as dual citizens of the world. They are at once American citizens as well as the citizen of the country where their parents may have immigrated from, or their grandparents or their great grandparents. And they wear that duality proudly. And it starts to make sense to ask the question then, if one parent's home is on fire, but another parent's home is standing just fine, there are people outside sitting on the front porch drinking some tea, but the parent across the street, it keeps burning their house down. I don't think it's abandoning your parent across the street who keeps burning their house down to say, you know what, you are kind of bad for me. And I don't want to live like this all the time with you. So I'm going to go across the street to um, the other parent's house, the one who's not burning their house down every 5 to 10 business days, who isn't picking fights with all of our neighbors, who isn't threatening to annex whole other houses on the street because they think they can. And I'm gonna go spend some time over there and lower my cortisol levels. And maybe I'm gonna sit on the porch and drink some tea with them, maybe some lemonade. Potentially, I might set up a hut in the backyard for writing workshops with my friends, or start a garden, you know, and I think if you look at some of the rhetoric that is happening in the world, you will see that there are a lot of not a lot, but there are a number of people who looked at the house that they lived in, the United States of America or whatever country, and said, this house has been on fire every 5 to 7 business days, this house is on fire. For us, it's every 4 years, right? Every 4 years, we get a new president, and every 2 years, a new Congress, every 4 years, new Congress, and they never seem to line up. And when they do, they're either great or they're destructive as hell. There's no middle ground with this. There's literally no middle ground. And at some point, the real options for the people living underneath that 5 to 7 business days, everything's always burning down. One of the options has to be, well, but hang on a second. Just for a second, could you turn your head and look over there? That other house is not on fire, and it belongs to you too. It belongs to you too. Now you might be asking, but Dr. Sashin, what belongs to us? We are we are the descendants of people of whom we weren't given the option on where to plant our feet. We had to plant our feet where we were brought to and make the best of it through some really horrific times. But to me, that means the world is now my option, the entire world, because I belong to that which makes me whole, happy, healthy, and safe. I belong to that. I do not have an allegiance to a place that couldn't care less if I'm whole, happy, healthy, safe, or even alive. And uh, I don't think it's it's hard to see why people leave a place that does not serve them. And we've lived in a really interesting duality in the United States as Black people, especially. We live in a duality. But the status quo is broken. And since the status quo is broken, that means you have a lot more options than you used to have. Now you might be thinking, well, my job's gone. I don't know if I'm going to be able to buy gas because, Iran and the Strait of Hormuz and that Yahoo person who, is trying to fight everybody. And I would say to you, those are very valid concerns. And I hear what you are saying. But those are going to be the same concerns whether you're standing in the middle of Kansas or on a beach in Bali, right? Same concerns, just different location and potentially a different way of looking at the solution to your problems, right? A different understanding of how the world works, not just the hunk of land that you have been existing on, because that just happens to be where your parents lived, where your grandparents lived, where your great grandparents lived, where your great 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 grandparents lived. Because I remind everyone all the time there are movements, mass movements of people all through history when things are happening. That is how some peoples end up in certain places. So if we take conquest and chattel slavery off the table, some people move for other reasons. They would move for famine, they move for environmental issues, they move for political reasons. Great migrations of people have always shifted around the planet looking for better options. Better options. And I think the descendants of people who were forcibly taken against their will, um, can with great pride say that I can be a citizen of anywhere because I have endured and my people have endured long enough. And being a citizen of the world gives you different options. Now, I'm not telling you to renounce your American citizenship. I'm not telling you to renounce anybody's citizenship. Hold on to that passport as long as it works for you. But keep in mind that the grass might in fact be greener on the other side of the rainbow and not astroturf, as some might have you believe. Don't let them fool you. It's not astroturf. And because it might be greener on the other side, it is important to think about what are your real options. If you are in the Gen X generation, as I am, you're between 45 and 57, 48 and 57, whatever the years are. I think it's 71 to whatever. Anyway, then you are at a time in your life where you are experiencing physical changes if you're a woman because you're going through perimenopause, maybe financial upheaval if you're a Black woman and you've experienced a layoff, but not everybody is experiencing financial upheaval. And I need for people to keep that in mind. Not everyone is stressed about money. Yes, prices are going up left, right, and sideways, but not every job has been lost. Not everyone is necessarily feeling the financial pinch, but they're feeling the pinch in other ways. And I am talking to you who are feeling the pinch in other ways. It may not be the $4 gas station gas or the $7 eggs. That may not be what's been turning your hair gray. It may be the possibility of your child being drafted into a war that you don't support, under administration that you don't support. It may be quality of life issues that you see slipping through your fingers because though you might be okay, if your community is going down, it's going to be very difficult to remain okay, right? And I don't think that I don't think it's a good idea to point your finger at people who say, you know what, I can do better someplace else, and then they go, and then they go. And it's important to recognize that, as Walden writes about civil disobedience, if you want to see a new status quo and you don't intend to fight civil disobedience, to fight for that, then you're going to have whatever happens. Whatever happens. Plain and simple. And I'm part of the 92%. We did our part. And there's too much history of civil unrest and civil disobedience that nobody needs to give generations a primer on how to protest. Those primers have been out there for too long. Nobody needs a primer on how to protest. You don't even need to look at the United States for primers on how to protest. You can look over into Europe for primers on how to protest. Like there's across the globe are primers on how to protest. And across the globe, those primers are full of civil disobedience, civil unrest, violence, and change. And if you're not ready to do that, then you're just waiting for the new status quo. That's it. You're just waiting for the new status quo, whatever it is. You'll figure out how to live under it. And that's fine. But I'm going to encourage my sisters to find in yourself, in a changing world, what options you might not have thought about before. Where you can see yourself in 3 to 6 to 9 months that would bring your cortisol levels down, raise your serotonin, give you sleep enough to clear the cobwebs and the chatter that's constant right now out of your head so that you could make decisions about how to best navigate the coming new world. Because it's here. The coming new the new world has already replaced the old world, and it's only taken 2 years to do so. So time is moving faster at a faster clip. And so it's important to not wait. And the wait and see, that was over 18 months ago. The first 6 months, when we were talking about shock and awe and how that was deliberate, and it served its purpose because so much shock and awe was designed to distract, and the shiny thing distracted from the devastating things. And now the devastating things are commonplace. And so when you think about the past almost 2 years, ask yourself where you want to see yourself in the next 2 years, and then start moving in that direction. The real options: relocation, new job in another place, moving out of the middle of the country, maybe to the coast if that's what you want, moving from the coast overseas if that's what you want. Thinking about, should you know should you be investing your monies in X, or should you be investing your monies in Y if investment is still on your plate? Looking at how the world is moving, where alliances are forming, where allies are falling away. Watching the safety scale of countries shift and change, right? And asking, where do I want to fit in? Where can I go do some good? Where can I go work with community to build something that is strong and safe and stable? Where can I be a part of something, a part of a place, a part of a people, a part of a group that is working to advance things that are near and dear to me, things that are important to people who look like me and are like me? Where is my life going to be in a year from now? Am I going to be planting a garden and in Buffalo, New York, because I want to be right next to the Canadian border just in case? Am I going to be teaching English in a foreign school in China? Am I going to go write that novel and live in Malaysia? Am I going to lead women on retreats and wellness retreats and recentering and grounding and life affirming retreats, and provide artistic space for them at my villa in India? What is it that you're going to do in a changing world? You have a lot of real options, not just pie in the sky options, because one of the things about the world reshaping itself is you get to reshape yourself with it. You get to flip the script of whatever it is that you've been scripting. You get to flip it. You get to flip it. It's rather nice. It's actually really rather nice. But it does take some courage, and it takes some action. And it's time to act on some options that you might not have thought you had before. So I told you at the end I would offer you some things if you stuck around, and you stuck around, you made it to the end. I'm going to I need to take some of this off the screen. Hang on. So we're going to run the Life Reimagined Experience workshop, and we're going to be opening the doors for that in a week. And yeah, a week, because I got too much going on this week. But that door will be opening in a week. And I'm going to be talking about it during the workshop, during the experience. But I'm really looking at how you're going to spend the next quarter, then the next quarter until the end of the year, because movement requires momentum and momentum requires community to help keep you motivated. So this time we're going to offer this workshop as an eye towards helping you figure out your plan for the next 3, 6, 9 months, and then building from there a scaffolding, a framework that will allow you to continue or to move in ways that you might not have been moving because you've been moving a little bit slow or you haven't been quite sure which way you wanted to go yet. Well, now's the time to figure that out. Now is the time to work through that. So look for that to drop and the next week on my channel. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, like, subscribe, and share. And the sign up will be limited. I'm only taking 25 women, and I'm limiting even that pretty exclusively because it's an experience, it's a workshop, and it's work. It is work. So if you're interested, you will need to keep your eyes on this space as I will continue to talk about it as we get closer and closer and closer to the time. But it is so important to make sure that you set aside some time to figure out what's next and then have a plan to act on it because the time for waiting is no longer here. That is no longer here. All right, it's Dr. Sasheen. Thank you so much for your time, your effort, and your attention. If you're catching me on any of the places where you listen to my podcast, thank you for listening. If you're catching me on YouTube, thank you for watching. Your presence and your time and attention means so very much to me. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you all next week. Bye for now.